is 11 hours 2, and at this time we present to you a very special edition of Let's GAFF. On this, the eve of New Year's, 2019 is coming in a matter of hours, but there are pressing matters happening in our country. We've got Let's GAFF coming your way, and we're joined by the Honorable Minister of Public Telecommunications, Cathrine Hughes. Stay with us. Good morning to our wonderful nation. Season's greetings to one and all, and welcome to Let's GAFF. Joining us in studio is Cathrine Hughes, who is the Minister of Public Telecommunications and as well a member of the Alliance for Change. Good morning, season's greetings, Merry Christmas, and pre-Happy New Year's to you.
Thank you, Narissa. Thank you, and the same to you. The same to you, and yes, happy New Year.
Just a matter of hours until. And before we get into the business at hand, of course, our topic of conversation today is about the political climate, and a lot of people want to know about the way forward. Before we get to that softer side, how has the Christmas been for you?
I have to admit it's been a very unusual Christmas because it hasn't been as relaxing in terms of time at home, in terms of relaxing, watching movies on TV, that kind of thing. I haven't had the luxury of that. But I was very fortunate to have my family, my sister and my brother here. So we still had a lot of time gaffing in the evenings till the wee hours of the morning, as family, as you know, do. So it's been good. I've been thankful. I'm always thankful for what we have.
Just as you might have, and I'm sure a lot of the other members of government and those who hold public office might have had a bit of a distorted Christmas season because of what came just a few days of the eve of our Christmas celebrations here in Guyana, the larger part, on the 21st. And we must address the elephant in the room, so to speak, the no confidence vote that came, and more so from one of the AFC members as well. For you, that initial reaction, that was something I did not see in all the recordings circulating, but what was that moment like for you?
Well, it was a shocker. I mean, one of your own who you speak to all the time, and of course, rumors were circulating, and several of us spoke with Charandas, and the behavior I thought was out of character. I think if you look at his statements during his budget debate, and I urge people to go back and say look at what he said during the budget debate and what he said after. It's a complete turnaround, and therefore I do feel that there was definitely some monetary inducement, which is very, very sad, because I think a member of parliament has a responsibility to go in there. I don't think that we want Guyana to get to a stage where big businesses or an opposition party or individuals out of Trinidad that want to have a bigger stake in our potential and our new oil industry could feel that they could pay people. So I think it is most unfortunate. But as a friend said to me, Christ also had a Judas, huh? So, as I say, there are other avenues. Normally, in other parts of the world, you would resign and you could publicly say that you are resigning. But for one person to decide that he acts on behalf of the entire electorate, I don't think is a fair way to look at it. But it is what it is. And most importantly, we want to make sure that as a country we can move forward, that we are safe, and that we let this go through the proper channels and the proper modes of behavior.
Absolutely. Within the party, within the Alliance for Change, what type of individual was Mr. Charandas, though? Was he someone that was often communicating, seeming friendly, seeming comfortable?
Oh, yes. There's no question about that. I mean, I considered him a friend. I think that he, like all of us, I mean, I think the PPP have successfully created this image that we are not interested in the sugar workers. People forget that this government actually spent $1 billion a month for 36 months. The monies were approved by the parliament. So when you consider, I like to say, look at your household income. A government budget is very similar to that. You only have a certain amount of money to spend, right? And when you consider that this government spent 1 billion, not 1 million, $1 billion on the sugar industry and making sure that we could do as best as we could for those sugar workers. We said we were going to pay them their severance. We paid one set in January. We said we would pay the second set before the end of the year. We paid the second set in November. But yet there's this whole hysteria that was created that we weren't going to pay them. So as far as I'm concerned, we were true to our word. In making a decision to spend $1 billion on our sugar industry, as opposed to teachers that wanted money, the nurses want money, the police and security services want money, there are demands everywhere. But I think that, and that's why I want to remind our listeners and our viewers, there is documented proof that the sugar industry was collapsing years before. And therefore, when this government came into being in 2015, we were faced with an industry that had collapsed. They owe billions of dollars, and those monies are owed long before 2015. And so we had the challenge of looking at this and deciding what can we do to fix it. And so we did some analyses that said there are some of the sugar estates that do not perform, that are non-performing. And therefore, instead of putting money into a black hole, those we will close. And the others that are operating, we are going to support those. It is sad that even after, when it came to jobs, the ones that were closed, we decided that, look, we have to close the ones on the West Bank, some of them. And therefore, what we would be willing to do is to transport some of those sugar workers to estates that would still need sugar workers. But then, of course, the politics of Guyana and the PPP started ranting and raving that people shouldn't have to drive, shouldn't have to be transported. But again, this is where, I like to say that I was in Jamaica. I lived in Jamaica in 1980 to 1986. In 1986, Jamaica started to close some of their sugar estates and only ended up with a few that we knew could perform. And that is because the European Union and we're talking about close to 10 years ago, said we cannot continue to subsidize the sugar industry in the Caribbean and in Africa and some of the Pacific places that are growing sugar. At the end of the day, we produce sugar at too high a cost. It's like you going to the supermarket and you're going to buy sugar. If other countries in the world are selling a bag of sugar for $1 and Guyana's sugar is being sold for $3, why would you buy Guyana sugar? It's a no-brainer.
Yes.
But these are the things that I agree maybe we didn't explain sufficiently as a government, or maybe the politics of the situation that we started screaming and ranting and raving, different people with different agendas. But at the end of the day, as I mentioned about that transporting, if there's work at another location and we're going to put you in a bus and take you to that location, so you still have a job, you still can feed your family, why would you not want to do that? And that's the sad thing with the politics of the situation.
There are so many sectors that are thriving,
Yes.
and there are some that are still facing some challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And now there is a sense of uncertainty as we head into 2019 for many persons, and especially when you would pay attention to the media and information coming out of the PPPC in relation to what the current government is looking at as their recourse. And more so, Dr. Jagdi, you're calling for the government of the day to resign
Yes.
with immediate
Yes.
effect.
Yes.
With regard to legal recourse, is there grounds for that, and what are some of the options that are currently being looked at?
Absolutely. I want to start by answering that question to say that yes, the Constitution has a specific paragraph that Mr. Jagdeo is holding on to. But Mr. Jagdeo himself knows that the courts are the highest decision making bodies in any country. And Mr. Jagdeo and his former Attorney General Anil Nandalal have used the courts on umpteen occasions. In fact, in many parts of Guyana, if you look back in the press, it's almost like a running joke, go to the courts, go to the courts, because that's what they have done. The fact now that there are differences in interpretations in other parts of the Constitution, why Mr. Jagdeo must feel that only he has recourse to the courts and not the government, I have no idea. And this is where, as you know, there was the issue of his third term. There was the fact that the Constitution explained it in a certain way, the way it was written. And the PPP had a different interpretation. And it went to the courts in Guyana, and it eventually went to the highest courts that we answer to, which is the Caribbean Court of Justice. And the Caribbean Court of Justice made their ruling. It is exactly the same analogy. The government this time has a different interpretation. The government should have the right to take it to the courts, the local courts, and then to any other courts, including the CCJ, if they wanted to do that. That actually is the fundamentals of democracy. So, to me, this hysteria that you have to resign, there are different interpretations. And therefore, we should allow the process of going to the courts to take its way, as has happened on several occasions. And the PPP know that they've gone to the courts. They went to the courts on the hiring of the head of GCOM. The courts made a ruling. As a country, we would be living in anarchy if we decided that the courts were not the final decision-making body, because that's exactly why you have the courts. You look at it one way, I look at it in one way. You and I are neighbors, we got a dispute, we can't come up, we know who's right or wrong, we abide with what the courts say. And therefore, yes, this is a period of uncertainty. And one of the things I would urge Guyanese is to be patient. I am most distressed at the racial undertones that we are seeing, especially on Facebook, on social media, where we are attacking people, personal attacks. And that I find is totally unacceptable. The racial slurs, the agenda that says black people can't run a government and they gotta get out. There are similarly negative terms, coolie people behaving like that. That is not what we are as a people. I feel very strongly about that. People know that I have always felt strongly about that because my family has every single race in it. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, if I begin to bust up my family, I can't do that. And so my urge is that Guyanese people, we know that we cook for each other. I know women who, when their sister or their friend who could be of a different race got challenges, can't babysit the kids, they will cook a pot of food and we feed in all the kids. We're not distinguishing what that child looks like or what kind of hair they have. Mm-hmm. And so my urge and my pleading is that Guyana, we are bigger than that. And we must not let any political organization take us down that route of racial intolerance. It will only lead to destruction.
And it's interesting because you have been championing an effort to have that connectivity with regard to ICT and more so accessibility to
Certainly,
the world and
certainly.
persons using this medium in such a way. And I'm happy that you're here, and I think this is one of the things, especially as we head into 2019, we need to see a lot more of, and I think the public would agree with me in this regard, is to have more interactions and feedback
Yeah.
from our government,
Yes.
so as to have things set straight. Because once there are rumors circulating and persons are posting things,
Yes.
and we're in an age where anything that's posted, especially on Facebook,
Yeah.
people believe it's true. You
Yeah.
need to have them set straight as to what it is.
And as a media person, Narissa, I agree with you. But this is where also I think the media needs to do more investigative reporting, and this is where the media can come to us. Most members in the media have my cell phone numbers, and I would love you to feel free to reach out to us more. I think you're absolutely correct. I want to remind people, because I was thinking about this last night. In 1997, we had some political turmoil, and there was a court case. And this is where it's not only the government, any citizen. We've had citizens that have gone to the courts to ask for the courts to look at certain situations and to come up with a position. In the 1997 elections, there was an election petition that went to the courts. And as we know, at the end of that, I think it might have been 3 years or 5 years later, the court said that the election results were vitiated. You remember that was the first time many of us heard of this word vitiate,
Yes.
which meant that the election results were really then thrown out. But by that time, you remember we were going to another election. And therefore, as I'm saying, this is not a new thing. We have the courts, and that is where the decision needs to be made, I feel.
Yes. And actually, that was one of the allegations, if it may be the right word to use, of Mr. Jagdeo with the government going to the courts as to prolong the time, because the court will not deal with this. This
Can
will not
you-
be a judgment as
Yeah,
in tomorrow.
yeah, but the whole country waited, I think it was 3 years, for the 1997 election to be vitiated. So we sat and waited patiently with the 97 election. The government has already said that we were due an election in 2020. The issue is whether the election is in 3 months' time or whether it is after. We are willing. I do not think this government, I can speak for this government and say that it is not in our interest, and we have no intentions of going beyond 2020. The courts will decide whether we're going in 3 months' time. And therefore, there's a solution in place that is much more immediate than the vitiation of the 1997 election that, as I said, took 3 years. So that is not in our agenda. As a government, I think that we have done tremendous things. I think, unfortunately, we've done a poor job of explaining it to the people. And I would venture, and I can get into trouble by saying that I don't think that we've had a supportive media environment that has actually tried to be fair. I think most of the media has, and here I'm talking about the print media, has not exactly been objective. And here I'm going to be bold and talk about my personal situation. So, as you know, recently there was a big controversy about conflicts of interest and Cathy Hughes. And Starbuck News, for example, did an editorial. And they made the decision. What I found really sad is that the editor of Starbuck News actually said that he had no intentions of calling Cathy Hughes and asking her some questions. So imagine, and this is where a lot of the fake news and the lack of objectivity. I come from a journalism background. If I'm going to do a story on whether the sky is blue, you have a responsibility under the basic tenets of journalism, to call the man who says that the sky is blue and get his comment. And then you also call the man who says that he thinks it's not blue, but it's black. And you get his comments. The purpose is that the viewer should be able to read that article, and it mustn't be one-sided. The reader must be able to say, well, Tom Jones said blue, and Johnny said black, and then he could decide where he is in there. But when you have media that does not pick up, does not feel that they have to even give the other side an option. The fact that the editor of Stabrook News could say that he doesn't have a responsibility to ask Cathy Hughes. The fact that Bar Jaggio said he had not submitted his information to the Integrity Commission, and Cathy Hughes had submitted hers since June, very quietly, very individually, long before this situation. So I maintain that everything that was required under the law, I did as an independent person, because I hold my integrity very, very strong, my personal integrity. But nobody took the time to call and say, Cathy Hughes, we worried about this. Tell me what you think about this. Because then I would have said, guys, I was told to report. I sent my stuff to the Integrity Commission. I have done all of those. Now, if this is a unique situation that has never emerged, you tell me what else you want me to do. Tell me what else you want me to do. You know? So that is the strangeness of the situation. And this is where we get into this whole realm of fake news that we have to be very careful about. Because the politics of race in Guyana is something that we have to deal with as a people. And we know what has happened in the 60s. I was born, mid-60s. But the reality is we know it was a very difficult time. And we don't want to go back to those days. So the rumors of who do what and one race against the other, as an individual Guyanese, we have to stand tall and say we must not. We will not go down that road. We have too much to offer this world and to offer ourselves. I tell people that we have this incredible godsend. 2 days ago, there was another huge storm in the Philippines. 23 people died. Guyana, we waking up with bright sunshine. We got endless opportunities for us to get up and go. And the reality, in some areas, we get all caught up talking and we ain't getting up and going. People complain about some of the foreigners coming into Guyana. And part of that is because we are not, as a people, getting up and going enough.
And they're seeing the potential.
And that's right, they're seeing the potential. So when we have to, as a government, we have to help our locals to see the potential and let's get going. If you are in catering, how can you put yourself together with the girl that's doing the parties, you doing the meats, who got special skills in desserts? Form yourself in a company. Make sure you do it the right way. Get your TIN number so you can apply for bigger jobs. More people coming to do business in Guyana means that there's going to be more plumbing. There are going to be more vehicles being bought that mechanics got to maintain. If you have a son or a daughter, make sure you're sending them to a technical school. Because in an oil industry, it can't be just what you could do. You have to have some kind of paper qualification. Mm-hmm. The technical schools all have the programs there now. We have made sure you know about my ICT drive. But we need to get the young men to go and do the automobile mechanic. So you come out with a City and Guilds or whatever, a TVOC qualification. Those are the things we have to do because it's a different time. And we have to prepare to change Guyana. I see the monies and the revenues that come from oil being there to build that bridge that David Patterson has talked about. Not a 2-lane bridge. There's a whole heap of question about, oh my God, the bridge is now twice the cost. It is twice the cost because it's a larger bridge. In this day and age, given where we're going to, why would we build a 2-lane bridge? when we're going to have the volume of traffic that will make it necessary to do a 4-lane bridge, you know?
I know your schedule is really tight, and by the way, I must apologize to our viewers and listeners here on Let's GAFF. We were to be joined by Minister Patson,
Yes.
who is engaged in a meeting as well, and you have to head off to one. So my final question to you, Minister Hughes, what is the way forward? What is the government's position on the way forward? Tomorrow is a new year.
Yes.
What is the position and provision for Guyana and Guyanese?
Okay, so the way forward, the government feels that we have an opportunity to submit a different interpretation to what happens in a no confidence vote. A no confidence vote is a very unusual thing. Remember that the AFC had put a no confidence vote to the parliament in 2014, but you remember the PPP's response was that they prorogued parliament.
Mm-hmm.
So we never really had an opportunity to debate it. I think if we had had an opportunity to debate it, this issue of what is a majority, whether it's 33 or 34, would have come up. Whichever way, it's something that Guyana needs to have a legal position on going forward. So we have submitted an interpretation to the Speaker of the House. The Speaker will look at it. He will, I suppose, rule on it. He has said that we come back on the 3rd for him to discuss, and this is a quote, the consequences of that vote on the 21st. And who knows, depending on that, there may be an individual, it's the right of any Guyanese, to go to the courts to get an interpretation. The government, maybe, I don't know, maybe the opposition. So what I'm saying is that everybody has, in a true democracy, you have recourse to the courts. That is what a democracy is. And so, more than likely, I think that is where this is headed.
And with regard to replacing Charanas in Parliament?
And we have recall legislation. So technically, well, not technically, Charanas has already been expelled. And as the law requires, we will replace him with another member of Parliament.
Has that person been identified already?
I think the person has been identified, but I am not in a position to say publicly. But I would say that by the 3rd, the public would definitely know. So for all intents and purposes, there's a different interpretation. Like the PPP has gone to the courts, the government can go to the courts. That is a sign of our democracy. I know people are saying that, oh no, that's not democratic. We did it in the 97 election. The PPP has done it several times, including most recently with the head of the GCOM. They did not feel that the way it was done was right. The courts ruled. We have independent courts and we have to judge their judgment. I think until then, when that information and guidance will be given to the people, I asked, let us greet this new year with prayers for peace and stability. I want us as individuals to be able to look at our situation ourselves, listen to the two sides of the coin. As I said earlier, there are things that we could have done, but when you sit on the inside, there are lots more things that you are aware of that others may not be aware of. And I say, we've done a lot of roads, we've done a lot of lights, we've done radio stations, we've done ICT hubs. A week after we came into government, we had a horrendous flood, do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
And we found places, there were outfalls that had not been cleared in 30 years. I don't believe in looking back, but when you have a drainage area that had not been cleared in 30 years, and a city council that did not work, then we as a country, we know we have garbage collection that, does not work all the time. And therefore, those are the situations that we have to that we have to fix. We had no local government elections. Communities can only work if people choose their own representatives. And this hysteria, only 30% of people voted in the election, in local government election. Local government election never has a large turnout. So because you have 30% of the people, you're automatically assuming that the whole country are not happy with the government and they're going to vote the government out. We have to go to an election. The table, the situation might be totally different if you have 70% of the people voting. You only had 30. So this hysteria to me is not an accurate one.
And just for the record, there are rumors that should the APNO AFC win the next election, that it would be as a result of them rigging.
The elections were not rigged in 2015. The PPP, and people need to think this through. The days of rigging elections have gone. Absolutely gone. People know that there's counting at the place of poll. So there are representatives from every single political party that sit there, and you come up with a statement of poll. So if you have your reps there, when the box is opened, and people know that every representative goes to the polling station before, the representatives of the political parties look and they see that the box is empty. They all sit there and they watch everybody vote. And at the end, there is a statement of poll that is put outside the polling station. And that statement of poll lists the final votes at every single polling station. And so the PPP has a rep, AFC, APNU has a rep, whatever, if there are 10 other political parties, each of them can have a rep there. And they fill in that statement of poll to say that yes, we all watch this box. And these are the votes that we counted. And then it's put outside publicly. So when the polls close and that statement of poll is listed, everybody can see. Look at what the PPP have said. The PPP's mantra has been that they lost by a very small margin. You remember how they keep saying there's only 4,500 or 4,900 votes that they lost by. Which means that they started off shouting that the elections were rigged. And then they came to a position that is only 4,000 votes, and they're going for those 4,000 votes because that's how they're going to win. So I want to reassure Guyanese that the system is there to ensure that there's fairness. I'm distressed that we have all this screaming and shouting and all this fake news, because representatives from the parties have an opportunity to be there and the elections will be free and fair. And if the people of Guyana decide that they're not happy with APNU AFC and they want any other political party, all Cathy Hughes is saying to you that you must go to the polls and cast your vote. I said it before and I will say it again. I actually feel that we have done a lot of things. We've done a lot of roads, we've done a million different things, and in our campaign we will mention those things. Main Street and so many areas used to flood just by some heavy rains. That doesn't happen. How many Christmases, every Christmas Eve or Boxing Day, people waking up with water in their house? Did we have that on Christmas Day? No. So I am confident we are making progress. I am confident that we are bringing integrity. At the end of the day, all these institutions have to work. And we've brought integrity to those institutions. So let the people decide when we have an election. It is always the people's will, and the APNU AFC and Cathy Hughes will support the will of the people. I believe in the importance of democracy.
Thank you, Minister Hughes. And of course, our microphones and cameras are open to you to return after January 3.
Absolutely.
Following Dr. Scotland's decision or his pronouncement in Parliament. And as well, we look forward to what is to come in 2019 and hoping for the best. Of course, country first, peace and togetherness for all. I wish you all the best, and of course, our government as you usher in 2019.
Thank you very much, Narissa, and I wish you, your team, I want to wish all of Guyana, prosperity in the new year, and I want to say that there are great things in store from us. We have a windfall in potential revenues that will come after 2020. It's an opportunity to build our houses. And build our country. More hospitals, more bridges, better roads, better telephone services, better internet all over the country. So let us be positive and let us all commit to making Guyana the home we all want it to be. God bless everybody and Happy New Year, Guyana.
Thank you so much. And of course, we'll have more conversations in the new year. This has been Let's GAFF on NCN.